Did the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine have a specific role during World War One?
It did, and it was an unusual and slightly serendipitous one. The Liverpool School, as you know, opened in 1898, but it was geographically disparate. The ward was at the Southern Hospital. The laboratories were actually part of the existing University of Liverpool, so it didn't actually have a central building. That was finally constructed and completed in 1915, and that is actually still the central old build of the campus of the Tropical Medical School. The plan was that everything would go into that building, but of course by then the First World War had started, was in full swing, and a problem was occurring to the War Office, not so much from the trenches of Belgium and France, but from the Turkish campaign. That's a slightly little known theatre of war of the First World War, Turkey, the Dardanelles, Gallipoli and so on. And this was an area where there actually were some tropical infections around. There was dysentery and there was malaria, benign vivax malaria, but nevertheless, by 1915, problems were occurring with men going down with fevers and with diarrheal disease. Now these were treated as much as possible on the spot, but there was little or no tropical expertise on site in these campaigns. So the men were frequently brought back. And of course both dysentery, particularly the amoebic form, and vivax malaria had a propensity to recur, to relapse. So although the initial infection may disappear locally, it would reappear. So quite a lot of men were returning to the UK with these apparently tropical infections which couldn't be managed on the spot. So Liverpool was actually commissioned by the War Office to be a military tropical hospital. And that's actually what the new build became. Instead of the laboratories and the offices moving into that building straight away, it immediately became essentially a tropical military hospital. And probably something in excess of 100 beds were put into a building which was not really designed as a hospital at all. And it stayed that way until 1919, until actually after the end of the First World War, and the tropical school itself didn't really take it over until 1920. And during that time, many men were treated from largely the Macedonian front in the Balkans campaign, largely with malaria, some dysentery and other conditions. And an interesting facet from that, as well as the fact that tropical physicians from the school treated those men, increasingly a lot of clinical research was done. And if you look at the Annals of Tropical Medicine, which was the scientific journal of the tropical school, from about 1918 to about 1921, there's a series of very interesting papers and articles dealing with trials of drug treatment of malaria in these men. So, as well as treating patients from the First World War, there was actually a drug research side to it. So, an interesting aspect of the school's input to the First World War, but a completely, if you like, accidental one.
Was the tropical school training doctors for service in these areas?
It wasn't. Interestingly, it did that in the Second World War, and that may have been one of the lessons learnt from the First World War, that actually RAMC, Royal Army Medical Corps doctors, working abroad did actually need some sort of training. And the Second World War, that rapidly came into operation, and there were 2-week courses run right through to about 39 to 44 in the Second World War, for Army medical personnel to have a cram course of tropical medicine, which apparently was very good, and many of the Army doctors who went through it were enthusiastic about it, because similar courses were held in London and Edinburgh, and they weren't always quite so enthusiastic about those. So I think that was probably a lesson learned from the First World War, but the answer is actually no, it didn't have a teaching role in the First World War.
Right, thank you very much.